the weight of ceremony 3 months before the Vorth challenge. Ambassador Lyra Hayes had still believed in diplomacy. She stood in the Council's strategic gallery, a transparent corridor that overlooked the Viridian sector. Below, Station Viridian 9 rotated peacefully, its haberings glittering with the lights of 50,000 souls, Scythian, Mordelian, and a dozen other species living in the fragile harmony the Council promised. Beautiful, isn't it? The voice belonged to Councillor Dex, a Mordelian whose crystalline body refracted starlight into rainbow patterns. 500 years of peace in this sector. Peace, Lyra repeated, tasting the word. She'd been on the Council for 18 months now, long enough to understand what that word really meant here. You still don't approve of our methods? Dex's form shifted curiosity, perhaps concern. Your reports have been ... pointed. My reports have been honest. Lyra watched a transport vessel dock at the station. You call it peace. I call it managed violence. There is a difference between savagery and civilization, Ambassador, is there? Lyra turned to face the Councillor. The Scythian Mordelian Compact has been at war for 3 years now. How many casualties? Approximately 47,000 combatants, over 3 years. That's roughly 15,000 per year. Lyra pulled up a holographic display. Do you know how long the last major human conflict lasted? Your World War II. 6 years, I believe. 6 years. 70 million dead. Lyra's voice was flat. We learned something from that horror, Counselor. We learned that if you're going to fight, you end it. You don't stretch it out for centuries, carefully calculating acceptable losses, making sure every species gets their turn at glory. Dex's form pulsed thoughtfully. You see our seasonal accords as cowardice. I see them as a lie. You've convinced yourselves that limited, eternal conflict is more civilized than decisive action. You've built an entire culture around making sure wars never actually end because ending them would disrupt your power structures. And yet, Dex said softly, your decisive action killed 70 million people in 6 years. Our way has preserved billions over centuries. Lyra had no answer for that. Not then. The alarm came for hours later. Lyra was in her quarters reviewing trade protocols when her communicator shrieked. Not the standard tone, the emergency frequency reserved for immediate threats. All Council personnel, this is Station Viridian 9. We are under attack. Requesting immediate static. Lyra was running before she consciously decided to move. The strategic gallery was in chaos when she arrived. Councillors clustered around holographic displays, showing real-time feeds from the station. Pirates, the Cora theory, a traditional raiding culture that the Council had granted protected status under the seasonal accords. They were supposed to limit their attacks to cargo vessels and mining installations. They were supposed to follow protocols. They weren't following protocols. Lyra watched in horror as Corathi Corsairus leak, predatory ship store into the station's habrings. Not the commercial sectors. The civilian quarters. Activate the defense fleet, she demanded. Now, the garrison is mobilizing, Dex said calmly. They will establish defensive positions according to the seasonal response protocol. How long? 40 minutes to full deployment. Lyra stared at the Mordelian. 40 minutes? People are dying right now. The protocols exist for a reason, Ambassador. If we respond with disproportionate force, we risk escalating the entire sector into uncontrolled. Lyra grabbed the Councillor's crystalline form with both hands, feeling it hum with indignation. There are children on that station. And there are children on every world that would burn if we abandoned the Accords. Dex's voice was gentle but unyielding. We do not make these decisions lightly, Ambassador Hayes. We have lived with the consequences of uncontrolled warfare. We have seen species exterminate each other. The seasonal Accords prevent that. By allowing this, by accepting that some tragedy is preferable to absolute catastrophe, Lyra released the counselor and turned back to the display. 40 minutes. The human part of her brain did the calculation automatically. Average Karothi raid duration. Station defensive capabilities. Evacuation speed, ... Estimated casualties, 2,000 to 3,000 civilians. There has to be another way, she whispered. If you discover one, Dex said quietly. The council would be most interested to hear it. The garrison arrived 38 minutes later. The Karothi Reavers, having seized approximately 4 million credits worth of traditional tribute, withdrew according to ancient protocols. The council fleet maintained appropriate distance, ensuring the raiders' cultural practices were respected. Final casualty count: 2,847 civilians dead, 6,200 wounded. Lyra Hayes spent the next week on Viridian 9, walking through the damaged Habrings. She met a Scythian father who'd lost his entire family when the raiders breached their compartment. She held the hand of a human child 7 years old, named Marcus while doctors worked to save his mother. She watched that mother die anyway. At the memorial service, council representatives spoke of the tragedy. They offered compensation. They praised the garrison's measured response that had prevented escalation. They called the dead unfortunate losses in the greater preservation of galactic peace. Lyra said nothing during the ceremony, but afterward, in her quarters, she pulled up every record she could find on the seasonal Accords. Every treaty, every protocol, every carefully calibrated allowance for traditional warfare. She found the pattern immediately. The Accords weren't designed to prevent war. They were designed to make it permanent, to ensure that no species ever gained enough power to threaten the Council's authority, to keep everyone in a constant state of controlled conflict, too busy with ritual violence to challenge the system itself. The Karothi Reavers were allowed to raid, because their raids kept trade routes uncertain. The Scythian-Mordelian War continued because it prevented either species from dominating their sector. The Vorth Dominion's aggressive posturing was tolerated because it justified military spending across a dozen neighboring systems. The Council had built peace on a foundation of eternal, managed war, and they called it civilization. Ambassador Hayes requested a formal audience before the full council 2 days later. The chamber was packed. Her request had been unusual enough to draw attention. Ambassadors, councillors, honored representatives, she began. I come before you with a proposal regarding the seasonal Accords and their application to conflicts involving civilian casualties. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Dex's crystalline form flickered with what might have been concern. The tragedy at Viridia 9 was not an aberration, Lyra continued. It was the inevitable result of a system that prioritizes stability over justice, that accepts civilian casualties as unfortunate rather than unacceptable. Ambassador Hayes, the arbiter, interrupted. The seasonal Accords have preserved billions of lives over millennia. Your own analysis acknowledges this. It does, Lyra agreed. But it also shows something else, that we've become so afraid of total war that we've accepted eternal war instead. We've convinced ourselves that limited, perpetual violence is somehow more moral than decisive action. Are you proposing we abandon the Accords entirely? A Scythian representative's tentacles writhed with agitation. Return to the chaos that nearly destroyed this galaxy. I'm proposing, Lyra said carefully, that we distinguish between conflicts and atrocities. That we recognize the difference between ritual combat between consenting military forces and the massacre of civilians. That we stop hiding behind tradition when what we really mean is convenience. The chamber erupted. Some species shouted agreement. Others condemned her as reckless, primitive, dangerous. The Arbiter's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. And how would you enforce such a distinction, Ambassador? Who decides what constitutes an atrocity versus a legitimate conflict? Lyra met the Arbiter's gaze, or what passed for it in a being of pure thought. The victims decide. Anyone who attacks civilians has abandoned the Accords. Anyone who honors them has nothing to fear, and the consequences for violators. Total war, Lyra said quietly. Not ritual, not seasonal, not controlled. We identify the threat, we eliminate it, and we ensure it never returns. The silence that followed was absolute. Finally, Counselor Vex spoke, voice resonating with ancient wisdom. You describe extinction-level warfare, Ambassador. The very thing the Accords were designed to prevent. No, Lyra corrected. I describe warfare with an endpoint. What we have now is where's its violence without resolution, conflict without conclusion. You've built a system where wars never end because ending them would threaten your power, and you believe humanity has a better answer. Lyra thought of Marcus, the 7-year-old boy watching his mother die. Thought of the Scythian father standing in the ruins of his home. Thought of 2,847 names on a memorial wall that would be forgotten in a month, buried under the Council's careful management of acceptable losses. I believe, she said slowly, that humanity has learned to hate war so much that we'll do whatever it takes to end it. Not pause it, not manage it, end it. And if that makes us dangerous in your eyes. She paused, let the weight of her next words settle. Then maybe the galaxy needs a little danger to remind it what peace actually means. The vote was predictable. 247 against her proposal, 18 in favor, 43 abstained. Humanity's initiative to modify the seasonal accords was formally rejected. Lyra Hayes left the chamber with her head high and her heart heavy, knowing she'd failed. She didn't know yet that failure was about to become irrelevant, because 6 weeks later, the Vorth Dominion would issue their challenge, and humanity would answer in a way the galaxy had never imagined possible. Personal log. Ambassador Lyra Hayes, Galactic Standard Date, 284-7193. They think I'm advocating for barbarism, for uncontrolled violence. They don't understand that I'm advocating for the opposite in human history. Our worst wars happened when we tried to fight limited conflicts with unlimited ambitions. Korea, Vietnam, the endless counterinsurgencies of the 21st century. We learned the hard way that if you're not willing to finish a war, you shouldn't start it. The Council has inverted that wisdom. They start wars they have no intention of finishing. They've made violence perpetual and called it civilization. I don't want more war. I want less. I want wars that end so thoroughly that the next generation doesn't have to fight them again. But to get there, you have to be willing to finish what you start. I don't think the Council can understand that. They've been playing their games for too long. Maybe it's time someone flipped the board. End log. Asterisk. The challenge, the Vorth War Herald, arrived at the Council chamber, precisely on schedule. As tradition demanded. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, its 6 limbs adorned with ceremonial blades that caught the prismatic light. Behind it, 2 attendants carried the tablets of grievance ornate crystalline slabs etched with formal complaints. Ambassador Lyra Hayes watched from humanity's delegation table, her face carefully neutral. She'd studied Vorth culture extensively in the weeks since her failed proposal. She knew what was coming. The Vorth Dominion, the War Herald announced, its translator rendering the clicking. Chittering language into Galactic standard brings grievance before the Council. The human species has spoken words of disrespect, has questioned sacred traditions, has suggested the dissolution of bonds that have held civilization together for millennia. Lyra didn't react. Let them posture. The Dominion, the War Herald continued, raising one-bladed limb skyward, invokes the right of correction. We challenge humanity to trial by combat, that honor may be restored and proper respect demonstrated. The council chamber fell into the expected murmur of approval. This was familiar territory, ritual challenge, ceremonial response. Everyone playing their assigned roles. Ambassador Hayes. The Arbiter's voice resonated through the chamber. The Vorth have issued formal challenge. Do you accept on behalf of humanity? Lyra stood slowly. Beside her, Junior Ambassador Chen tensed. She'd briefed him on what might happen, but knowing and experiencing were different things. Before I respond, Lyra said calmly, I'd like clarification on the terms. The War Herald's mandibles clicked with approval. Good the human understood protocol. 3 ships, the War Herald declared. The debris field of Carthan 7. 14 solar rotations hence. Combat until first yield or 20% casualties, as the seasonal accords dictate. The victor claims honor. The defeated offers appropriate compensation. Standard ritual warfare. Carefully controlled. Perfectly safe. And the grievance? Lyra asked. Specifically, your words before the Council. Your proposal to abandon civilization's foundations. Your species' continued insistence on primitive, finite warfare. Lyra nodded slowly. So this challenge isn't about territory or resources. It's about philosophy, about whether wars should end or continue forever. It is about honor and tradition, the War Herald corrected. Concepts your species apparently fails to comprehend. Something flickered in Lyra's eyes, too quick for most observers to catch, but Councillor Vex noticed. The Mordelian's crystalline form pulsed with sudden concern. I see, Lyra said. Then let me be absolutely clear about humanity's position, so there can be no misunderstanding. She pulled up a holographic display, showing the memorial wall from Viridian 9. 2,847 names glowed in the space between delegations. These people died because the Council prioritizes tradition over lives. Because appropriate response means letting raiders murder children. Because your seasonal accords have made violence so comfortable that you've forgotten what it actually costs. Ambassador, the Arbiter warned, this is not the forum for you want to challenge humanity's philosophy of warfare. Lyra's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Fine. We accept. But understand something first. We don't believe in your rituals. We don't believe in your seasonal conflicts. We don't believe that war should be comfortable or civilized or perpetual. The War Herald's skin flushed deep crimson aggression, anticipation. They thought she was escalating the rhetoric to make the eventual ritual combat more dramatic. They were wrong. When humanity fights, Lyra continued, her voice dropping to something cold and final. We fight to end the fight. Not pause it, not manage it, end it, completely, decisively, permanently, because we've learned something the rest of the galaxy seems to have forgotten. The only good war is one that makes the next war impossible. Empty words, the war herald scoffed. You will send your 3 ships. We will demonstrate superiority. Honor will be satisfied. This is the way of no, Lyra interrupted. This is your way, not ours. She turned to face the full council, making sure every delegation could see her face, hear her words, understand her meaning. Humanity accepts the Vorth challenge. We will meet you at Carthan 7 in 14 solar rotations, but we decline to limit ourselves to your ritual format. We will not send 3 ships to dance and posture. We will not calculate acceptable casualties or fight until someone politely yields. The chamber erupted in confusion. The war herald's skin shifted through a rapid spectrum of colors: confusion, anger, disbelief. You cannot refuse the seasonal accords. The arbiter protested. The challenge has been issued according to. We're not refusing the challenge, Lyra said flatly. We're refusing to pretend. You want to test humanity's philosophy of warfare? You'll get exactly that. We will come to Carthan 7. We will answer your grievance. And we will demonstrate precisely why humanity believes wars should end. This is madness, Councillor Vex said, crystalline form pulsing with genuine alarm now. If you abandon the protocols, then maybe the Vorth should reconsider their challenge, Lyra finished. She turned back to the War Herald. You have 14 rotations to withdraw your grievance. If you don't, we will demonstrate the difference between ritual combat and actual warfare. And I promise you, it will be educational. The War Herald's 6 limbs trembled. Confusion. A warrior's instinct, screaming warnings its political mind couldn't quite process. You threaten the Dominion. I'm warning you, Lyra corrected. There's a difference. You've issued a challenge based on philosophical disagreement. Fine, we'll answer it philosophically. You believe warfare should be eternal, managed, civilized. We believe it should be decisive, complete, and final. 14 rotations from now, the galaxy will see which philosophy is correct. She sat down. Signaling she was done speaking, the council chamber descended into chaos. Junior, Ambassador Chen, caught up with Lyra in the corridor outside the chamber. Ma'am, what the hell was that? That, Lyra said, pulling up her personal communicator, was setting the stage. For what? We just accepted a formal challenge and then refused to follow any of the rules. The council is going to do exactly what it always does. Argue, debate, and ultimately do nothing. Lyra was already composing a priority message to Earth, but the Vorth won't back down. They can't. We just questioned their honor in front of the entire galaxy, so we're actually going to fight them. Yes, with how many ships? 3, 5. The Accords limit, Chen. Lyra stopped walking and turned to face her junior ambassador. What did I say in there? That we're not following the ritual format. And what do you think that means? Chun's eyes widened as understanding dawned. Oh no, oh yes. Lyra resumed walking. Contact Admiral Petra. Tell him I need the 3rd Fleet mobilized and ready for deployment in 12 days. And pull every favor we have with the logistics cores. We're going to need supplies positioned along the fastest route to Carthan 7, ma'am. The 3rd Fleet is 700 ships. You're not seriously, I'm completely serious. The Vorth issued a philosophical challenge. We're going to answer it philosophically. She paused at the entrance to humanity's embassy wing, and Chen. Make sure the hospital ships are ready to. When this is over, I want to be able to provide medical aid to every Vorth casualty. We're not here to massacre them. We're here to teach them. Teach them what? Lyra thought of Marcus, watching his mother die. Thought of the Scythian father standing in ruins. Thought of 2,847 names on a memorial wall and countless thousands more across the galaxy. All deemed acceptable losses in wars that would never end. That there's a better way, she said quietly, even if they have to learn it the hard way. Mobilization. The message reached Earth 72 minutes after the council session ended. By the time it worked through the bureaucratic chain to reach Admiral Viktor Petrov at Earth Defense Command, diplomatic back channels were already exploding with speculation. Read the message 3 times before reaching for his communicator. "Get me the Secretary General," he said. "And someone find out if Ambassador Hayes has lost her mind, or if this is some kind of brilliant strategy I'm not seeing." The Secretary General's response, when it came, was succinct. "Trust Hayes. Mobilize as requested." Authorization code follows. Petrov stared at the authorization code for a long moment. It was genuine, the highest level of military authorization short of declaring total war, which, he supposed, was exactly what Hayes had just done, even if she hadn't used those words. "All right," he muttered, pulling up fleet deployment screens. "If we're doing this, we're doing it right." The Third Fleet was technically designated for rapid response operations. The ships that got called when something needed handling fast and with overwhelming force. It had been assembled after the Viridian 9 massacre, a direct result of Hayes's post-incident report recommending that humanity maintain the capability to respond to crises without waiting for council approval. 700 ships. For dreadnoughts, 16 carriers, 32 heavy cruisers, and the rest a carefully balanced mix of destroyers, frigates, support vessels, electronic warfare platforms, and enough logistics support to maintain extended operations far from home. It was, by any objective measure, massive overkill for a ritual combat engagement, which was exactly the point. Petrov started issuing orders at the Vorth, Dominion's primary military command station. War Master Krath received the intelligence reports with growing disbelief. "Confirm this," she demanded, her 6 limbs twitching with agitation. "Confirmed." "War Master," her intelligence chief responded, mandibles clicking nervously. "Human military communications have been intercepted. They are mobilizing what their classifications designate as the Third Fleet." "How many ships?" "Preliminary estimates suggest 700. Silence fell across the command center. 700 ships. For a ritual combat limited to 3 vessels per side. "They're bluffing," Krath declared, but her skin's color betrayed her uncertainty. "Attempting to intimidate us into withdrawing the challenge." "War Master," another officer ventured, "perhaps we should consult with the Council. This exceeds all protocols, for we will not appear weak before the galaxy." Krath's bladed limbs struck the command console, leaving deep gouges. The humans issued their statement. "Let them bring their fleet. When we defeat them according to the seasonal accords, their humiliation will be absolute." But privately, in the quiet of her personal quarters later that night, Krath pulled up every available record on human military history. She read about wars fought with fury and finished with finality. She studied the human concept of total war, a phrase that had no direct translation in Vorth language because their culture had never conceived of conflict. That didn't follow rules. She read about a place called Carthage, destroyed so thoroughly that the victors allegedly salted the earth to ensure nothing would ever grow there again. About cities reduced to rubble not as collateral damage but as deliberate strategy. About enemies not defeated but dismantled. Their capacity for warfare eliminated not for a season but for generations. And she read Ambassador Hayes's speech before the council. We will demonstrate precisely why humanity believes wars should end. For the first time in her distinguished military career, War Master Krath felt something her training had never prepared her. For doubt, the council held 3 emergency sessions in the next week. The first was formal, with carefully worded resolutions condemning humanity's disproportionate response and calling for immediate de-escalation. Lyra Hayes attended via hologram and said exactly 6 words. The challenge was issued. We accepted. The second session was more heated. Species accused humanity of barbarism, of threatening the foundations of galactic civilization, of preparing to commit genocide against the VOR. Hayes actually laughed at that last one. Genocide. We're bringing 400 medical personnel. We've positioned hospital ships along 3 different routes. We've already drafted post-conflict rebuilding assistance packages. If we wanted genocide, counselors, we wouldn't be preparing to heal the wounded. Then what are you preparing for? The arbiter demanded. Victory, Hayes said simply. Complete, decisive, inarguable victory. The kind that ends the argument permanently. The third session was quieter, smaller, just humanity's allies, and a few neutral parties. Councillor Vex spoke for them. You're going to break the seasonal accords. No, Hayes corrected. We're going to prove they were already broken. You've built a system that makes war comfortable, safe, endless. We're going to show the galaxy what war actually looks like when you stop pretending. And then, maybe, everyone will be motivated to actually pursue peace instead of managed conflict. And if you're wrong, if this triggers the very escalation the Accords were designed to prevent. Hayes met Dex's crystalline gaze steadily. Then the galaxy was already doomed, and at least we tried something different before the end. On the 8th day, the first elements of the Third Fleet began arriving at staging points along the route to Carthon 7. The ships moved in formation, their navigation lights creating rivers of light across empty space. On the 10th day, the Vorth Dominion issued a formal statement declaring they would meet the human challenge with appropriate force and demanding the Council sanction humanity for violating the spirit of the seasonal accords. On the 11th day, 36 species quietly moved their civilian populations away from the Carthon 7 region, just in case. On the 12th day, Ambassador Hayes boarded the diplomatic cruiser Resolution and prepared to join the fleet. Before departure, she recorded a message to be broadcast to the entire galaxy on the day of the battle. To all species of the Galactic Council, what you are about to witness is not barbarism. It is not savagery. It is something your seasonal accords were designed to prevent you from ever seeing. Warfare with an endpoint. Humanity does not love war. We have suffered through conflicts that nearly destroyed us. We have learned, at terrible cost, that the only wars worth fighting are those fought to end war itself. The Vorth Dominion issued a challenge to test our philosophy. We accepted. What happens at Carthon 7 will not be ritual. It will not be ceremony. It will be a demonstration of what warfare looks like when you stop, pretending it's anything other than organized. Violence meant to achieve political objectives. We will win decisively, completely, and then we will help the Vorth rebuild. We will offer them partnership. We will show them, and all of you, that there is another way. Watch closely, learn, and then ask yourselves, do you want to continue with eternal, managed conflict? Or are you ready to actually try for peace? She sealed the message and sent it to Fleet Communications with a timestamp, to be broadcast at the commencement of combat operations on the 13th day. The Third Fleet completed its assembly in deep space. 3 light hours from Carthan 7, Admiral Petrov contacted Hayes aboard the Resolution. We're ready, Ambassador. All systems green. Medical teams standing by. Rules of engagement are clear: disable, don't destroy. Capture, don't kill when possible. And above all, make it so fast and overwhelming that they surrender before too many people die. That's the goal, Admiral. The Vorth value strength. We'll show them strength, but we'll also show them mercy. Let them see that humans can do both. One more thing, Petrov said. I've been in the military for 38 years, fought in for conflicts. Never once felt good about any of them. He paused. This is different. For the first time, I actually believe we might be fighting to end something instead of just continuing it. That's the idea, Admiral. That's always been the idea. Then let's go teach the galaxy what real peace looks like. On the 14th day, at precisely the hour specified in the Vorth challenge, both fleets arrived at Carthan 7. The Vorth brought their 3 ceremonial warships, magnificent vessels adorned with honor banners, crewed by the finest warriors of the Dominion. Humanity brought 700 ships, medical bays, supply chains, and a simple message: this ends today. The galaxy watched, and everything changed.